Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Suzerain Kingdom of Rizia, where it is time for us to go to Lesbia and have a diplomatic meeting. This should be fun. I'm sure they don't hate us or anything. It's not like we've screwed them over recently. When we arrived in Perla, the press surged forward at me like a relentless horde, shoving their cameras and microphones my way. Their shouts and pleas for attention clashed with the stoic demeanor of the lesbian security guards. These guards, clad in crisp dark uniforms, formed a protective barrier around us, their eyes scanning for any reporter daring enough to breach their formation. Our convoy commenced its journey, a series of sleek black cars gliding through the lesbian capital's bustling streets. We eased to a stop at the entrance of the Elio house. I stepped out into the cobblestone driveway. The building itself was a small but imposing structure of classical design, its yellow painted walls standing out boldly against the greenery of the park. I was led into the waiting room, a space with an understated elegance, furnished with leather chairs and a mahogany table. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, casting soft patterns on the floor. As I waited for Prime Minister Alvarez, my attention was captured by a mysterious looking teapot, resplendent in its golden sheen. Is this the same teapot that we break as Anton Rain? Inspect the teapot. I started inspecting the teapot. The elegantly crafted vessel was engraved with intricate designs, delicate floral patterns interwoven with abstract shapes that reminded me of medieval resonant motifs. I leaned in closer, observing the way the light played off its surface. The piece was definitely made out of Rizian gold and looked far too ancient for its well-maintained shape. I wonder if it was an original Rizian artifact or an unrelated gift from another foreign dignitary. Whatever it was, I question why such a valuable artifact was left out in the open like this. But then again, those who were allowed into this room were leaders and people of stature, would probably have the common sense not to disturb this priceless relic. I totally didn't break it as Anton Rain or anything. As I stood there absorbed in thought, the doors opened and Prime Minister Alvarez came in. I see you immediately spotted your kingdom's gold, Your Majesty. It's an ancient resonant artifact uncovered in southern Lesbia, quite a valuable item, I've been told. Ah, forgive me. He offered his hand and I shook it. Please, let's get comfortable while we discuss our matters. On his gesture, we moved to the sofas and sat down. So, Your Majesty, it's good to see you again. Despite your attempts to block our efforts in Morella, I must add. Sure, let's be neutral. It's good to see you too, Prime Minister Alvarez. Of course. Then let's dive straight into it, Your Majesty. Therefore, I would firstly want to extend my thanks again for cooperating with Less Power on Aureus. It's a greatly beneficial deal for both of our countries. Yes, we are glad to have to have reached a peaceful resolution on Aureus. But I would have preferred to have reached an agreement on the MITZ as well. I will take the liberty to say that you've started quite a mess by casting your vote the way you did. You are allowing their government to take control of our shares in the operation just like that. You're screwing us over, Your Majesty. It's simple as that. Uh, I mean, no one's trying to screw you over. Yes, I am trying to screw you over, but I'm smarter than to say that to your face. Sure. No, nobody's trying to screw over anyone. I'm just taking the options that are in the best interests of Rizia. Best interests, really? Well, they are definitely not in our interest. His face turned expressionless. You must be really desperate to team up with the commies. Well, in any case, as long as you continue working with them, you cannot expect the lesbian parliament to sympathize with Rizia. He tapped his fingers aggressively on the table. You will sabotage the deal, I'll handle Prime Minister Saltala so we both keep our shares, and thus we'll have the doors open for us to develop a strategic partnership with Rizia. Nope. Yeah, what's done is done. I believe we've been through this. Let's talk about other matters. Just think about it. You can't seriously believe working with Mr. Hagel to be beneficial for Rizia in the long term. But fine, if you don't want to discuss this, we won't. Oh, I almost forgot. He walked to a wooden cabinet full of alcohol bottles. Would you like a drink, Your Majesty? Water, please. He poured water in one glass and whiskey in another. He handed me the water and sat back down in front of me. Here. Well then. You know, Velen is starting to create a lot of problems for the region. I have serious stability concerns. Your Umburgian allies are complicit in this instability, as much as I oppose the actions of the Vezek government and sympathize with the cause of the Bloodish rebels. This only resulted in President Smolak extending his powers and conducting a massive military operation right on our doorstep. You know that Lesbia also has a considerable number of Bloodish people living inside our borders. We don't want the problems of Sordland and Velen to spread to our country. The Vezek seized the assets of our companies and sent a wave of refugees towards our borders. They're escalating the problem. Be careful when you're dealing with President Smolak. He is getting increasingly out of hand. I mean, uh, how is this new information? You're already aware of our situation with him, Mr. Alvarez. Let's just keep our eyes on him. I'm also worried about Valk's increasing pressure on our region. Hegel is desperately looking for partners to sway towards the CSP and fuel incidents to create division in Simricopa. They have unfortunately shown that they are quite capable of inciting revolutions in Rika and beyond. Be careful who you are dealing with, Your Majesty. You may be playing into their hands. Uh, sure, don't worry, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. You might not see it yet, but I believe he intends to take Heliland by force, igniting a series of conflicts that we may find ourselves in the middle of. You know, you have the ear of Queen Livingston. He took a sip from his glass and turned to me in a serious face. Grace is an important force on this continent, and I hope you will be on the side of peace, if it ever comes down to that. Sure. Many would also agree that it's your alliance that stands in the way of peace and is escalating. Are you really sympathetic to the very people who want to dispose of your whole family and political traditions if they get the chance? Well, anyway, we are normalizing our relations with Rumburg, and I just wanted to say that I need to talk to Queen Beatrice about all of this, face to face. Can you extend your support in organizing such a visit? That would make things so much smoother. Sure, if you want to visit Rumburg, just visit Rumburg. You don't need to involve me. If you say so. Thanks anyway. He took another big gulp from his glass. Was there anything else we could do for each other? Financial assistance? I don't need financial assistance. Look at my income. Might want to buy energy from Lesbia. Sure, energy demands are rising rapidly. I want to buy energy from Lesbia. Alright, we can supply you with gas from 1250 Arcasian litres per 1000 cubic meters. -2 budget per 1 energy. Okay, deal. Great to be doing business with you again, Your Majesty. Anything else on your mind? No, Mr. Alvarez, thank you for the meeting. Thank you for coming, Your Majesty. I stood up and walked out of the room with quick steps. That extra energy would allow me to build more factories. Okay, Morel and Dirty request diplomatic mediation. Apparently, it must probably cost more authority than I have. Sure, support with minimal effort. Okay, importing gas from Lesbia. So allow me to, like I said, it will allow me to build more factories. Okay, Rizia to mediate their Morella dispute. Okay, I passed through the palace garden towards the council chambers to meet with the council. Uncle Hugo greeted me in front of the doors. Your Majesty, the councillors are waiting for you along with the Lady Regent. We should go in. He opened the door and held it for me as I entered. The councillors were already seated around the table, deep in conversation. When they saw us entering, they immediately rose and bowed. In the name of Ruhek, peace be upon us. Fuck's sake. Please have a seat. My councillors nodded and took their seats. Before we begin, I want to extend my blessings for the upcoming royal marriage. Congratulations, Your Highness. May God bless the union between you and Mr. Sazon. Thank you, Grand Maisman. She smiled and bowed her head to Sal in respect. Now that His Majesty, is here, we can start the session. Everyone looked expectantly at Vinna. I'll begin with some quick notes, if you'll allow me. By all means, Lady Regent. Vinna took a brief glance at the document in front of her, then straightened up and spoke rapidly. According to the latest AN reports, living standards in the kingdom have increased significantly over the past several years. The majority of our citizens are quite happy with how things are going. Excellent. She smiled proudly. Despite the ongoing concerns of the working class, working conditions within Rizian industries seem to be acceptable for most. Thank you, Lady Regent, for sharing this information with us. While it's true that most workers are quite content with their lives, we should take care not to neglect the opinion of industry leaders. They can fuck off. For sure. Please explain what you mean by that. It's the least confrontational one. Ms. Werner, I'm sad to say that Rizian businesses do not hold the crown in high esteem at the moment. Bringing up all these worker concerns would only upset them further, and I'd rather not open that kind of worms. I appreciate your counsel, Ms. Werner. Let's move on now. Right away, Your Majesty. That's everything I wanted to address. We can now move on to individual briefings now. She put away her notes and gestured for Hugo to take the lead. What would you like to talk about first, Your Majesty? Sure. Lorenzo, what's the state of our foreign affairs? Of course, Your Majesty. Our relationship with Lesbia are deteriorating rapidly. Our meeting with Prime Minister Alvarez didn't exactly go as planned. On the other hand, Les Power has been supplying us with energy since our deal was signed. Sure, this will surely help our standing with them. Of course. Another important point is our scheduled meeting with the Vezek president. Your Majesty will have a chance to talk to President Smolak about the situation with Zilla. He may bring up yet another unexpected request or security issue. Regardless of his theatrics, we should do our best to reach a final resolution to ensure the swift return of Zilla. If all else fails, we can bring it up to the upcoming Alliance of Nations session. Sure, all means are to be considered to get Zilla back. We will get it back, Your Majesty. On the other hand, our trade relations with Morella are very positive. The final vote on the Ametizad issue, which will take place at the start of next year, will be the defining factor for our long-term relations with them. Great, this whole Ametizad thing has taken way too long already. Our relations with Derdia, on the other hand, have never been better. Their disputes with Morella and Velen still remain a major concern. He stopped for a moment to take a look at his notes. Oh, and also Supreme Vicemal Asmal sent us a letter praising the divinely ordained changes, as he puts it, that have helped our Golcondas community. Sure. Uplifting those poor oppressed souls was the least I could do, right, Grand Wiseman Ignatius? Resentment sithered behind Sal's placid expression. Indeed, Your Majesty. And last but not least, Palais, but Your Majesty is already aware of the situation with Duke Reinhardt. Since the crisis we had with them, the Grand Duchy's reliance on Lesbia has only grown. This has in turn brought Palais closer to Arcasia and ATO, with which I fear will significantly disrupt the balance of power in our region. Sure, we must find other ways to approach this before it's too late. Exactly. That is all for the overview, Your Majesty, but there is one thing I wanted to discuss with you. It was your intention to pursue greater ties with our neighbors, and now it looks more realistic than ever before to bring them together in a potential regional alliance. The collaboration and interdependencies we have formed thus far make this a viable strategy we can potentially pursue. Sure, I like the sound of it. Tell me more. With our current relations with the neighbors and the increasing pressure on our region by both CSP and the ATO, we have the perfect window of opportunity. Polystream is a crucial bargaining chip that we can provide cheaper gas to our other neighbors, connecting our economies even further. The same goes for more gas, the pipeline between Rizia and Morella. If our relations with Morella continue on their current track of improvement, they can also be a potential partner in the region. That will depend on the outcome of the next year's final MITZ board vote. I'm hoping for no last minute surprises. That makes me think that there are going to be last minute surprises, and I don't necessarily like it. If we can reach a resolution with President Smolak over Zilla, I believe they can also be a potential partner. Our treaty has already shown great promise. There is also Dirtia. We've normalized our relations with them, and I believe we can sway them towards a pact if we're able to assist them in their disputes with their neighbors. Everyone in the region is looking for more energy sources. They're under increasing pressure from the CSP and the ATO to subjugate themselves to the interests of the superpowers. Meanwhile, we are still on good terms with Rumburg and Grace, but our distant geographical proximity limits the benefits we can get out of those alliances. I truly believe that our national interests align with those of our neighbors, and if we can connect our economies further and create balanced dependencies on each other, we can ensure peace and unity in southern Makopa. Sure, I completely agree with that, Mr. Escobar. How do you think we can proceed with this idea? We can lead the initiative to form a neutral Southern Macopan pact. This would require us to funnel a lot of resources into it. If we can lead such a peace initiative, I think this is realistically possible. It is all about ensuring that our countries are linked in a fundamental level that makes cutting ties a losing scenario for everyone. This is the only way to bring together countries with vastly different ideologies and cultures like we have in southern Macopa. But it does come at the risk of alienated Rumburg. Queen Beatrice may see such an alliance as an affront to Grace, especially at a time when her kingdom is facing increasing geopolitical isolation. Uh, sure, that's a risk I'm willing to take. It's about time for us to be pulling away from Grace anyway. Thank you, Your Majesty. We can start the process by reaching out to our neighbors and preemptively funneling some funds into leading this initiative. Shall I begin our efforts? Yes, I want this alliance to happen. As you wish, Your Majesty, I will keep you updated as development occurs. Anything else you want to talk about, Your Majesty? An update on our military situation. Yes, Your Majesty. Parisian armed forces require investment. We are completely behind our neighbors in military capabilities. At present, we can deploy approximately 8 to 9 fully equipped infantry divisions. Unfortunately, we can only field 3 mechanized support divisions specifically trained to back our infantry and armored units during assaults. Taking this into account, it would create substantial difficulties in defending ourselves in the event of a military conflict. And as far as our tanks are concerned, we operate with only 2 divisions, while our neighbor's inventory far surpasses our own, she sighed. On the other hand, our air force is fully capable of challenging regional powers. Luckily, our fleet is capable of contesting our immediate neighbors at critical locations if necessary. Our submarines can also provide crucial support, enough to cause significant damage despite being few in numbers. Sure, thank you for the overview. Anything else you want to talk about? What's happening with the Rizian economy? Elena took out her ledger, placed it on the table, and opened it up. As already mentioned, living standards in Rizia are in a very healthy position as a result of a combination of economic policies. We have a very significant amount of money flowing into our economy. This is a great indicator for the future. We also have some reserves with which we can fund projects. She turned the page. When you ascended to the throne, we set a focus to diversify the Rizian economy away from resources. Currently, we have a very rigid energy economy with heavy reliance on certain sources. Our future is looking strong as long as access to those resources remain. Unfortunately, we are still only seeing average production capacity. This is something to work on. It's worrying news. I'll look into ways to increasing our production capacity. As for our business climate, with the current way of robust economic growth buoyed by market incentives to attract fresh investments, we are witnessing the formation of thousands of new businesses. Jobs are being created, employment rates are skyrocketing. It's a good time to be an entrepreneur in Rizia. Excellent. Sure, we couldn't have done it without you, Miss Werner. You should be proud. With your modest, Your Majesty, you had the final say on all of these decisions. She closed her book. That is it for the economy then. I think we've been through everything. Thank you for everyone's input. We can call this session over. Councillors bowed their heads in respect. After they left, I went back to the gardens of the palace to get some fresh air. As I rounded a curve in the path, the garden revealed itself in all its splendor. Manicured hedges surrounded patches of blooming flowers with ornate lamps on wrought iron posts, shedding lights over the twisting cobblestone walkways. It was a stark contrast to the austere council chambers I had just left. Just as I started to relax, I caught the faint sound of footsteps. When I turned to look, I saw Manus Sazon emerging from the shadow of an ancient oak. Your Majesty, may I have a word with you, please? Of course, Manus. I need to talk to you about something. It pertains to our prior discussion on potential reforms. Alright, let's hear it. In short, the reformists believe that the time has come to make the discussions of reform a reality. Something we were already collaborating on with Your Majesty. I believe the time for committing to a new direction for the country has finally come. Alright then, let's talk. Good. He motioned towards a secluded corner of the garden, nested between a tree. As we made our way there, his voice softened a whisper. Rizia is considered a constitutional monarchy, yet lacks a written constitution to define and safeguard its principles. Ah, shit. I've had trouble writing constitutions in the past. It's time the crown transfers its law-making powers to elected representatives. Should the king personally engage in drafting this constitution and align with the reformist movement in his proclamation, no authority in Rizia can denounce its legitimacy. Okay, sure. By doing this, when it becomes public knowledge, we'll both be targets for the monarchists. Then we'll have to make sure nobody has the means to intervene in the process or execute a power grab. We have to play it smart, Your Majesty. We can strategize together on how to proceed with this declaration, however, that will hinge on the specific content on the reforms it encompasses. Okay, this isn't the place for such discussions. Someone may hear us, may hear us. Let's start drafting a constitution and planning our strategy somewhere more secure. Of course, I'll reach out at a more convenient time. Have a good day, Your Majesty. He bowed, then took his leave. I lingered in the garden for a while in silence. Okay, let's hope this constitution goes better than the Sordish one. Okay, thousands of new businesses founded. Sounds awesome. Okay, Brunaz bustling with economic activity. Again. Okay, sure. Sure, allocate large funds. We don't have a lot of authority this turn anyways, so... Race trade volume crashes. Okay, -1 budget, -1 authority. Ah, that sucks. Okay, we will look... Sure, Rizia... no, we will look for real partners.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Why the fuck? It's... I did... Ah, fucking smart speakers, man. Okay, express regrets of falling trade volume. Negotiations with Smolak. Okay, let's go for the secret meetings first. It was late in the evening as I made my way downstairs to discuss our reform plans. I knew the perfect place in the palace to have this conversation. After I greeted Manus, I took him to the wine cellars below the royal kitchen. I flicked a switch hidden behind the bottles. The shelf rotated to reveal an opening in the wall, which led to a series of wooden staircases. The stairs creaked under our feet as we descended. The further down we went into the eerie, And to this eerie abandoned space, the greater the sense of detachment from the palace's luxurious interior. I'd learned about this place from my father as a kid. He told me it was the only place in the palace where he could feel truly alone. At the bottom of the stairs was a cold, gloomy room with stone walls furnished with a single table and a couple of chairs. The only spot of color was a pale blue pocket square on the floor. I picked it up and noticed it was embroidered with the initials MM. Someone else know about this location, Your Majesty? Uh, Certain household staff members, but they would never rat us out. All right, we sat down. Your Majesty, thank you again for agreeing to this meeting. I cannot overemphasize how much I respect what you're trying to do. This will carve your name into the annals of history not as a monarch who clung to power, but as a visionary who saw beyond the crown. Sure. We're here to discuss how we're doing this. You don't need to butter me up. I wasn't trying. He pulled a notepad out of his breast pocket. The RPP is ready to begin drafting reforms at our command. But first, I want to go over the main points of discussion to get a sense of your perspective and ideas. Our main objective is to ensure the political participation of our citizens. This is only possible if the monarch's power is limited, as enshrined in the Constitution. Our country still resembles an absolute monarchy. Your father allowed the parliament to exist as a symbolic institution, and now we can give it the true authority it represents. This would mean the head of government will be an elected official, which can be appointed by the head of state. Then they will lead the cabinet of ministers, it is a member of the House, and will be acting as the leader of Rizian government on behalf of the monarch. After all, our constitutional monarch does not rule, Your Majesty, but they reign. Sure, the monarch should act. I agree. The monarch should act as head of state and not of the government. That's what we've been campaigning for. Firstly, the Constitution will define the House of Delegates as the governing legislative body in Rizia. Their procedures and jurisdictions will be outlined clearly. Instead of the monarch, they will be in charge of managing the government budget and passing laws. Um, sure, sure. I think right of veto an is a fair thing. Only if the monarch holds the right to veto their decision. We can implement a veto process, but it must be defined in a way that doesn't allow the monarch to block every single piece of legislation at his or her whim. I agree. We can discuss the exact details later. I mean, yes, like you veto, and then a supermajority can overrule the veto. That sounds like the more reasonable approach. Secondly, we must decide whether to keep the old regional structure in Rizia or centralize the systems in Port Trazon completely. Keeping the provinces semi autonomous is guaranteed to cause friction between the royal houses and the new government, but the nobles in those provinces have held power for centuries. They will not give it up easily. I'm for decentralization. Actually, I'd rather not disturb the regional system. We should respect the autonomy of the regions and make sure each is represented fairly. I see. Respecting regional traditions would be a clever choice. However, it raises questions regarding how the provinces should be structured in such a system. Okay, framework defined by central government. Each region should function as a state and will be allowed to exercise autonomy within the framework defined by the central government of the constitution or the constitution. He nodded. If the regions retain a degree of autonomy, their local governments will share power and responsibility with the central one. An upper house, no. Fuck. Bicameral systems have so many problems. Sure, let's go with bicameral systems. Why the hell not? In a federal system such as this, having a second legislative body representing the provinces might be ideal. We could form an upper house. I see your point. You might be right. He took some notes on us, and that might go go well with the. I mean, it's more like U.S. Senate than the second option was more like House of Lords. This is more like U.S. Senate, and that I'm hoping this might appease the current noble houses. He took some notes on a small notebook. And to ensure the Constitution is followed correctly, the judiciary must be given the right to seize executive and legislative actions that appear to be beyond their power according to the Constitution. Ah, yes, judicial review. The judiciary interprets, defends, and applies the law in the name of the state and thus should be independent from the branches of government. I mean, yes, as long as the judiciary doesn't start legislating from the fucking bench. I'm looking at you, US Supreme Court. Safeguard rights privileges. Um, Safeguard for rights and privileges. Um, sure. I'm going to go with that. There must be accountability for the judiciary. I mean, you have to have like processes to impeach the judges, things like that. The judiciary can't be too independent. There must be mechanisms. Like that's the problem with the current U.S. Supreme Court. They're literally legislating from the bench. The judiciary can't be too independent. There must be mechanisms to prevent their abuse of power. They can't lack accountability. I don't disagree entirely, but the key is to achieve equilibrium between accountability and independence to ensure that justice is upheld. These, I mean, so yeah, yes, independent judiciary, but they must be there must be strong mechanisms that they for them not to overstep their power. He stopped for a moment to think and went through his notes. I think we can make it work, Your Majesty. The RPP can write a draft that we can all agree to. But the problem will be the forces against the democratic movement, the nobles, the police, the military. We have to be careful. While the constitution is being drafted, nobody can intervene in the process until it's declared. His face turned extremely serious. I'll be honest with you, I'm fearful that House Cesaro has the power to contest this by deeming it illegitimate and executing a power grab. Many officers of the law, as well as military personnel, are sympathetic, if not outright loyal, to the Zaro family. Tell me your honest opinion. Are they a threat? I'd rather be diplomatic with them. If you can offer the nobles a place in the upper house, we can potentially work with them. Perhaps we can. We can offer to establish a House of Lords. Ah, no, please. No, that will go so wrong. But it might be the lesser evil. It can provide a balance to the elected parliament, including this in the draft might make them willing to have a dialogue. We can include that in the draft as a compromise which might make them willing to enter a dialogue, or we have to keep it a secret and divert their attention away during the process. But even if that front is covered, what about House Torres? Do you think your relatives can decide to strike at, at the reforms? Your uncle holds incredible sway here. Sure. Yeah, if there's anything who can claim the throne during a crisis, that's my uncle. I don't think I trust him. I mean, he was loyal when I removed Rico. Sure, at least my cousin is not a problem anymore. How about the Grand Vizier? Does that make this more complicated? I think I still trust him. He remained loyal. I believe him when he remained loyal, even when I kicked his son out of power. Yeah, yes, it does, but I still trust Hugo. That's a relief. And finally, there is the whole task. I might be making a huge mistake for trusting him. There is the whole task of uniting the House behind the Constitution, but fortunately I've got that covered. He turned the page on his notebook and looked at me. So, Your Majesty, about the threats we mentioned. Now that my mother is back in the mainland, House Sazon should also be a part of this equation. She still holds enormous sway. We'll need a clear approach and a solid plan. Um, sure, we must be transparent and diplomatic about this. We'll have discussions with them. This is the only way the Constitution can be declared. That is best approach. You're missing words. This is the best approach. It's up to you who to involve in the discussion. Well, it's settled then. Any more thoughts before we decide on the draft? Um. Okay. Yeah. No. Let's start. All right. Let's start. Are we going to keep the federal structure and respect the autonomy of the regions? Yes, we will respect the current structure. He took notes. How about the legislative? You mentioned establishing an upper house. How would that be structured? I want an elected House of Lords, but I want to elect an elected Senate, but House of Lords might be the most realistic option here. We'll establish a House of Lords comprised. Hopefully, we can reform it in the future and turn it more into a Senate. Comprised of the nobility as an upper house to get the nobility's backing. He kept taking notes as I spoke. Uh, okay. Okay, sure, they will have limited authority of legislation with the power to vote and reject unconstitutional proposals and return them back to the lower house to be amended. However, the lower house should be able to bypass their veto. I understand. And the judiciary? No life tenure. Fuck that. Judicial review, yes. Life tenure, no. We will grant them the power of judicial review and to declare laws unconstitutional so that they can keep the legislative and the executive in check. He took notes. Your Majesty, I think we've achieved a lot today. I must start working on the draft as well as rallying the movement as soon as possible. Now that we're going to be transparent about this, it is important to gather as much support as possible behind the movement in the meantime. Maybe Vina, the Lady Regent, can help us with that if you decide to include her in the process. She's very popular with some segments of the population. Yes, that's a good idea. She can be instrumental in controlling the narrative. I'll ask her if she wants to be involved. Great. I will reach out to you when it's time to act. I greatly respect what you're doing, Manus. I hope this plan works out for both of our sakes as well as Rizia's future. It won't be long now, I promise. He smiled and we shook hands. As we ascended back into the wine cellar, I thought about what I had gotten myself into. Yep, this is going to be an interesting ride for sure. Hoped I was doing the right thing for Rizia. Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. Well, I guess me one, since you are me. Anyways, South Moroccan Alliance announced. Excellent. Okay, sector expansion is still underway. We have no authority, no budget. This should be fun. But that will all be for next episode. Thank you all very much for watching. As always, I have been Pope. Please do remember to like, comment, and indeed subscribe. I will see you all next time.